Brought to you by Penguin.
The Fortune Teller of Berlin by J.C. Maetis. Read by Kristin Atherton. Prologue. Dea, Mallorca, October 1973. She always stopped at the same point on her walk up through the village. It might have been due to the steepness of the walk, which now she was over 60, left her slightly out of breath, but she liked to think it was mainly because of the view. A small ridge with a dry stone wall and a field beyond of fig and olive trees, flanked by the terracotta roofs of village houses, then a haphazard patchwork of other rooftops, interspersed with green, pink, burgundy and yellow from bougainvillea, palms, grapevines and hibiscus, before dipping into the deep blue Mediterranean beyond. Teresa Delmar stopped to catch her breath as she admired the view. Early October, it was still warm, mid-70s, the oppressive high summer temperatures tailing off, the first hint of cooler breezes rising from the ocean. One of her favourite months of the year. The villa she was heading for, owned by Dea's most notable long-term resident, the writer, Robert Graves, had more of a mountain and valley view. She lingered a moment more on the sea view, in part to compose herself, because this time she'd be sharing her story with an audience of 2.
"I have a good old friend visiting, who I know would love to hear your tale,"
Graves had told her when she'd met him in his favourite village shop, Estanco, 2 days ago.
"I think it would be of particular interest to him."
Always a lover of intrigue, Graves didn't tell her who this visiting friend might be. She took a last couple of calming breaths before continuing on, the road dipping down after that point, then the last 300 metres of narrower village lanes and a farm track leading to Graves's villa, Ca Naluni. Graves rose from his chair on the terrace and greeted her effusively as she approached.
"So glad, Teresa, that you could come and see us today."
He held a palm towards a more diminutive man with a shock of tight-curled greying hair who rose from his chair a second after.
"Allow me to introduce my good old friend, Jacob Bronowski, although he's usually termed affectionately as Bruno by friends."
She nodded, smiled, and shook his hand. "Pleased to meet you too." Graves pulled a chair out for her, and they sat down at an oval terrace table. A bottle of white wine and a jug of water were on the table, alongside 3 glasses, 2 of them half filled with wine.
"Will you join us?"
Graves gestured. "Just some water, thank you." She smiled as Graves poured from the jug. "A bit early in the day for wine for me."
"I used to follow the sun over the yardarm rule too, until I lost track of what time of day it was."
Graves eased a sly smile. She'd heard stories in the village about Graves's increasing senility, but if he could acknowledge it, yet jibe about it at the same time, at least it hadn't reached too advanced a stage. There was little about Graves's life that wasn't the subject of village gossip. Part of it, in fact, also involving Jacob Bronowski. Of course, she'd instantly recognized the eminent scientist from his recent Ascent of Man programs on the BBC, but she hadn't realized he was now back in Dea. Graves and Bronowski had been firm friends years ago, and stories had abounded in the village of the wild bohemian parties held at Graves's villa. Quite commonplace in the swinging 60s, but these parties had run through the 1940s and 50s, as if Graves and his circle of friends were laying a blueprint for a new generation to follow a decade or 2 later. Dea had ever since been known as a haven for artists and hippies. But there had been a falling out between Graves and Bronowski years ago, and the smidgen of recent village gossip that there'd been a reconciliation between them she hadn't paid too much attention to. Until now, with the proof before her.
"I thought that Bruno would be particularly interested in your story,"
Graves said.
"Because he lost half his family in the Holocaust."
Bronowski nodded, but flushed slightly.
"That isn't a tale I like to spread too widely, or frequently, for obvious reasons."
Teresa met his gaze somberly.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?